Creating and connecting with other artists creates healing. Whether you're young or old, a seasoned artist, or just curious, we're so glad that you've joined us today to explore art together. Christine Knox, a seasoned illustrator, quilter, artist, and Mito champion, will teach us how to use various drawing materials, techniques, and help us dive into our second art project of this year, looking into the eye. One of the things that I love most about art is the freedom you experience as you create. And today we get to do that together. So please come as you are with the materials that you have. Join us in any way that is most meaningful to you. For some, you may prefer just to watch this session and go back later and follow along. Yes, this session is being recorded, so you'll have the opportunity to go back and review. For others, you may start the project today and need to take a break, and that's okay. Our hope is that each of you will find peace as you explore this time together. The chat is open, so please feel free to use this space to talk with other artists as we create. And if you have a question for Christine, you can either unmute yourself and ask, or if you prefer, you can put your question in the chat and I'll ask Christine. And if you stay to the end of the session, we will end with an open Q&A time. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Christine Knox. Christine was born in Alberta, but was raised primarily in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Nature has always been a huge part of her life, spending many hours either in the rainforest or at the beach. Her creativity began with spending hours coloring in coloring books, filling every page very carefully. Then she moved to real drawing at about 10 years old. These early drawings were centered around her surroundings and family. Pencils and pencil crowns were the first tools she learned to draw with, so it's not surprising they've become her preferred medium. Her favorite subjects to draw are animals and nature. For most of her adult life, she has concentrated on regular income, so she trained as a floral designer and eventually opened her own floral design studio. When she became ill with Mito at the age of 51, she had to close her business. She felt a deep sense of loss and purpose, but she turned to her art. That sense of purpose came back and allowed her to be creative in other ways. She's begun taking commissions for pet portraits with colored pencil and started painting with acrylics again. This has given her a flexible work schedule, which we all know is definitely helpful when you have Mito. So thanks so much for joining us today as we explore the eye to the soul with Christine. Thanks so much, Christine, for joining again and sharing your gifts and your talents and your skills. And I know you're making sure that picture is just it's just
Sorry,
right with the eye.
I just knocked my camera down, so bear with me for a minute while I fix that problem. Okay. Sorry, we very carefully had this all organized, and then of course I do one thing and I end up messing it up.
It's part of being an artist, right? I think, and two, I think one of the things about Mito is that we're all forced to be extra creative with the things that we're given and the challenges that we have. And art kind of prepares us for that because art is ever changing and always challenging.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, give me 1 sec, everybody. Sorry. Never fails. You just get everything sorted, and then
And I'm gonna blow up. I'm gonna put this on spotlight here momentarily.
yeah, could you do that stuff, and then we'll know whether, okay, that's not straight, but it'll do. I can always move that. I'm a bit OCD when it comes to having things straight. It drives me crazy to not have things looking proper. So welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be doing this with you today. And as Stephanie mentioned, if you need to take a break at any time, please feel free to do that. If you just want to sit back and watch, that's totally fine. I want this to be fun and not stressful for anybody. So if you're finding you're just getting too, into being like perfect with it, like let that go if you can. Like just be, let the process happen. We'll see where it goes. And no matter what your outcome is, it's going to be fantastic. It may not look like mine, and that's totally fine. We all see things in our own particular way. And so I don't want you to compare your work and what yours looks like to mine. This is just me teaching you my methods, and you're going to come at it with your own approach to some degree. And so, Stephanie, if you could, about an hour into it, if you could prompt me to take a little break so everybody can get up and stretch, or, get a drink or whatever they might need. Okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get started. Here I am moving that camera again because it's driving me crazy. So usually when I start, well, first off, let me ask, has everybody managed that wants to draw today, has managed to transfer their image to whatever paper they're going to be drawing on?
And you can feel free to put yes or no in the chat, or you can shake your head. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, whatever.
Because if you have it, we want to make sure you have time to do that.
Yeah, and I can guide you through that process too. You seeing anything, Stephanie?
I'm not seeing anything. I'm seeing some smiles.
Okay, I'm gonna assume, since we haven't heard a negative on not being ready, that we are good to go. So usually when I start a drawing, and particularly of the eye today, what I start to do is concentrate on the pupil itself, because that's going to start to, and then I work out from there. Some of my drawings, I start from the left to the right because I'm right-handed. So I don't want to be going over top of my drawing, but you'll notice I'm wearing this funny little glove. And so what this glove does is it just protects my drawing surface so that when my hand is on it, I'm not transferring oils or anything like that to my drawing. And then another thing I often use, and of course I don't have time, this is a sheet of, it's called glassine, and you can see it's got a bit of a shine to it. And so if I put that next to my drawing, so you'll see here that it looks a bit sort of I don't know, opaque, I guess you'd say. And that's the glassine on top of the thing. It's almost a bit like wax paper. So you can put it on top of your drawing to protect it as you work from one area to another. So I'm going to leave that there as well. But if at any time it's in the way of you seeing what I'm doing, I can move it aside. So just let me know how that goes. So we're going to start off with dark indigo.
Christine, what is the glove called that you're wearing?
It is called Parblo, Parblo. Okay, need glasses. Glasses are important. So I didn't get a chance to sharpen all my pencils. So every now and again, you might hear me making noise sharpening my pencils. So please excuse that if I have to do that. I don't like to do it all the time right at the beginning, because sometimes I need my pencils to be a little more dull. Like this one's a little bit more dull. Whereas something like this one is a little sharper. And there's different reasons why you want a sharper or a duller pencil, and I'll explain that in a moment. So the other thing that I want to teach you as well is we're going to start off with doing light pressure. So what light pressure looks like is, see how I'm barely marking my my hand. I'm just very softly touching it, not putting any pressure. So that's the pressure that we're going to start with, is just that very gentle pressure. And so what that looks like when I'm actually drawing, and I'm doing little circles too, just to fill in the area. So you'll see, Stephanie, have you got it, now that I've started drawing, can you spotlight the drawing just so it's everybody? They don't need to see my face. So yeah, I'm just going to go in little circles and fill in this whole center part of the pupil, without hitting these little, like there's a triangle and a circle. We're going to avoid those because those are the light patches that we have in our eye. That's what's going to make the eye realistic, is when you have those little catches of light. If you were to miss those, the eye would look kind of dead. So it's just important to try to always capture those when you're doing an eye. So we're just filling in that whole pupil really quickly. And if at any time I'm going too fast for you, let me know, because I tend to work fairly quickly. So I'm going to have to remind myself to slow down for everybody. So if I'm going too fast, let me know. Okay, so that was one layer of the dark indigo. And now we're going to go in with some black. And again, I haven't really sharpened this pencil a great deal, just simply so that we can use the softer edge to kind of cover a larger area. And you're going to see that I quite often will turn the pencil in my hand. And that's simply because then I'm able to use sort of a different edge, and it'll help my pencil to last longer before I have to sharpen it. So we're just going over that whole area a couple of times to deepen the black. And we can always go back with the dark indigo again and add a bit more of a layer. So if you're working on pastel matte, the reason I like this surface is it accepts a lot of layers of the pencil. So it really helps to have that ability. So there we go. So that essentially colored that in, but we'll be going back with more layers, as I said. So now we're going to switch to the ultramarine. So one thing I really want you to pay attention to is look at your reference photo. When we get to this next part, you're really going to see that paying attention to the reference photo is absolutely key, so that you can capture the different elements as accurately as is possible for you. So the next little bit with the ultramarine, I'm just going to color in that one highlight, the catch light. And I'm also going to put a little dot here. It won't really show up much, but I see in the reference photo there is a little catch light that's showing there. Just realized I forgot to pull my white out, so I'm going to go with a different brand of pencil, but it is still a white. So we're going to go to that blue catch light, and we're just going to lighten it up by putting a bit of white over top of it. And then we're going to put some white in the larger catch light in the center. Okay, so that's sort of the start of our eye. Now we're going to go on to a lot of the other details of it. So you'll notice to the right of the eye, you can almost see like window reflection in there. So we're going to capture that before we move on to the rest of the eye. So you'll notice in the image that there's these little squares. So those are the tops of the windows. So we're just going to put those in. And again, keep your pressure really light. And then there's a little, I didn't draw in the line drawing, I didn't draw this bottom part, but I'm just adding it in now. It's a bit more of an angle. It'll do. And then we're going to go back in with the white. So I found my white. I wasn't seeing it at first, but so we're just going to add in some white just to help Give some structure, even though we're not going to see it that much against the white background. And then we're going to go to the coal gray. I'm not good with Roman numerals, but 1V, whatever that is. I'm terrible at remembering how Roman numerals work. I don't know if anybody else struggles with that one, but I sure do. Okay, so we're just going to make it look like there's windows by putting in those crossbars. Come down here. And then there's some little lines here, so I'm just going to put those in. So now it kind of looks a bit like the windows. I don't worry about catching every single detail. It's just you want to sort of give a little bit of an impression of what you're seeing in your sorry, blanking on words, in your reference photo. So I've just added a bit of the olive green, yellowish into the bottom to make it kind of looks like some little trees and stuff that are visible in the bottom of the reference photo of the catch light area or the reflection area. So just added a little bit of that green in for the moment. And to blend colors, if you go over top with some white, that's just going to help the colors to all sort of come together. Okay, so that's just that little area done. Doesn't look like much just yet, but we'll get there. So let's go with some dark sepia. So there's dark sepia. I was trying to show you. There we go, dark sepia. And we're going to go back over the pupil with some dark sepia. I just want to darken it up a bit more. It's a little too fuzzy for my liking just at the moment. So
if you only had one dark pencil crown,
yeah,
would you make your bottom layer gray or would you make your bottom layer brown?
I would do gray, the darkest gray that you have. Because if you introduce brown, it's going to change the sort of the quality of the black. It's going to make it sort of brownish. So you want to stay in the same grouping of colors, you know, so gray and black are pretty darn close. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So now I am going to move into this area here. So you'll see there's a lot of texture in this area. We may not get to capture it all, but we're going to give as much of the detail as we can. So we're going to start with the light cadmium yellow. And we're going to, so you'll notice there's on the reference photo, there's like these outer lines. So we're going to be capturing those initially. Just kind of go around this outer area with your yellow. And that's just going to give us kind of the outline. One thing I didn't do that I normally do with my reference photo or with my my drawing is I soften up the background drawing just a bit, so it's going to make it less easy for you to see, but it makes it better when I'm actually drawing to not have those lines be quite as strong. So just go over it very lightly, but don't erase them because you still want to be able to see. And in your list that I gave you for supplies, this is one of the kneadable erasers, and you can see you can shape it into a really nice point, or you can use it kind of more on the rounded end. And that just will help you be able to either go into a small area or have it be in a larger area. So there we go. So back to doing the yellow. So again, following your reference photo, we're just going to keep going around and establishing this bit of lining on the outside. And that'll just help us to stay kind of aware of where we're going. Because sometimes if you don't have something plotted out, it can be a little bit difficult to pay attention to where you're going. So this area right here, that's another bit of a catch light. So we're going to go around it completely with the cadmium yellow and not block it off at all. So now that we've kind of got that, and I've left this area kind of because it isn't a strong line. So I'm leaving this area clear of the yellow at this moment. And so now we're going to start filling in some of the areas of yellow. So there's a large area of yellow right here.
So Christine, you've said a couple times the word catch light. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by that?
So when you look at an eye, be it a human eye, an animal eye, whatever, there's always little specks of light that hit, which is why it's called a catch light. So like this is our one catch light, this is another catch light. And if you were to look at an animal eye, you quite often, and these are catch lights as well, but just a little bit different in that it's actually, the eye is showing the reflection. So this could just be a dot, but in this case, it happens to be kind of the window effect that we're seeing. So does that explain it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and if you were, let's say you weren't looking at a picture, let's say you were drawing an original, and then you weren't looking at anything for reference, how do you decide where to put your catch light in the eye?
Okay, yeah, that's a really great question. So how I would do that is kind of, because I've drawn lots of eyes, I kind of know where a catch light's going to be, but typically a catch light's going to be either on near the bottom of the eye or at the top of the eye. Often the catch light is up here in this area on the right hand side of the pupil. And I don't know why that is necessarily, but that is quite a common spot for a catch light. And I think that that's probably just because the light's coming from above, and that's why it would show up there more so than anywhere else. So I'm just going to fill in kind of everywhere at this stage with this yellow in this whole center part of the eye. And I'm missing these little dots that are in your line drawing. I don't want to cover up any of those little dots at this point. So just go around those. And again, keep your pressure light. And I tend to do little circles at this stage when I'm filling in backgrounds. So I'm just going to move around this whole area. And again, miss these little circles and ovals. Don't worry about getting too perfect right now at this stage of the game. We're going to be doing lots of layers on top of this. This is just the starting point. So that's what you should end up with at this stage. How's everyone doing? Are you feeling like I'm going too fast? Am I going at an okay speed for you? I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but I also want to get as much of this done as we can during the time we have together.
And feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat, or if you just want to say hi, Feel free to do that too.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going to go in to these little square areas as well. There's a fair bit of yellow in there. So I'm just adding a little bit of that now, but we'll be going in with the olive green in a moment, because there's a lot of olive green in this eye. So I'm actually going to switch over in just 1 second. I just want a little bit more yellow on the outside here. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the olive green yellowish, and start with that. I'm going to keep my yellow in my other hand because we're going to be switching back and forth and using each one fairly frequently, switching back and forth. So where these lines are, we're just going to go over top of those with the olive green. We're just going to, those are kind of our reference points. So I'm just going to fill those in first. And then those dots that we left uncolored, we're going to fill those in with the olive green. And so we're just going to go all the way around, kind of giving ourselves some reference points. And we're going to be adding a lot of layers, a lot of detail as we go along. And we've got a couple of other catch lights here that are not going to be olive green. So just skip over those. You can draw next to them so that you remember to leave those alone. You can draw the olive green around it. And that'll help you remember, or it helps me remember anyway. Hopefully it helps you too, to remember to not go on top of that. I'm just going to go around, not necessarily everywhere, but pretty close to everywhere with this yellowish green olive. This outer rim of the eye is pretty much green throughout it. So we'll just fill that area in. And this is just our first layer. As we go through, we'll be increasing the intensity of the colors, more of the detail. This just gives us our base layer that we start to work with. The colored pencil is not a fast medium. It takes a while to fill all the areas in, to even begin to get into the real fun part. So you have to be a bit patient with yourself and with the drawing process. It doesn't really happen quickly. On average, when I'm doing a drawing, I can spend anywhere from 10 hours on a small portrait to, well, some I can do faster. It's really variable depending on the amount of detail and lots of different factors. But generally speaking, I can do a pretty intense drawing in 5 hours to 10 or sometimes 20 hours, depending on how detailed it is. So don't expect that you can get a drawing done really quickly. It takes a lot of patience. Okay, so now where we first drew that initial line, we're going to start adding a bit more of the green, kind of just in little strokes, little squiggles, little circles, little ovals. So just look at your reference photo and see what things you want to capture There's a lot of lines that are happening here, so I'm just gonna sort of fill a little bit of that kind of detail in. I'm always checking my reference photo just for some landmarks of where I want to put things. I keep looking back and forth at it, really paying attention to where color needs to be added, where I want to miss areas and have more of the yellow showing through. You quickly see that we've got a lot of texture starting to happen, and there's a lot more to add. So we'll just kind of keep working through it. And don't be afraid to go like really close into your pupil, because a lot of the lines do start radiating right out from the pupil itself. So I'm just going to add in some kind of random lines radiating out from the pupil. And we'll add lots more of those kind of details as we go along. So it's already, as you can see, starting to actually look like something. And we'll just keep working on that as we go along.
So Christine, how has being an artist changed the way that you see the world around you?
I'm always looking at details of things. Like oftentimes when I go out and walking in my neighborhood or wherever I happen to be, it doesn't matter. I look at plants and I go, oh, that's got a really interesting shape, or that's got a really interesting texture to it. And so I'll sometimes I'll go back home and I'll actually start drawing something that looks like that. Or I even sometimes carry a little sketch pad in my purse. It's just a tiny one. And then if I see something that really intrigues me, I can go to it and insert a quick little sketch. So I'm just strengthening up the yellow here a little bit more on the outside edge. It's just adding a bit more of another layer and brightening it up a little. So this time you'll notice instead of doing the circles, I'm doing a back and forth motion. And that's because I want to sort of create the way the lines and everything are with the pupil. I want to make sure that I'm capturing some of that same detail by going back and forth with lines. And you see the color is intensifying a bit more. It's not that I'm applying heavier pressure, it's just that it's another layer, so it's going to get brighter with each subsequent layer. I'm just going through, and you can even go right over top of the olive green, because we'll be going back over that as well and adding more texture as we go along. There, how's everyone feeling? How are we doing for speed? Are you able to capture the detail where you're feeling like you're getting somewhere with it? And so now we're going to focus a little bit more on some of the detail in the eye. And so sometimes that's going to be lines, sometimes it's going to be little circles, little dots. Whatever you see in the eye is what you want to capture. You're not going to necessarily capture every single little line, but you're going to want to capture as much detail as you can. And so I'm just going and adding all of those lines, radiating right out from the center, and every now and again adding a little circle or a little oval. You don't have to copy the reference photo exactly. You just want to capture the sort of the overall look of an eye. We're not necessarily looking for absolute photorealism here. We're just wanting to show that this is an eye. This is what an eye looks like, or can look like, because each eye is completely unique. Right. Got to shake my hand out every now and again. It's a really good thing to do. Let your hand relax, just shake it. Helps your wrist and your whole arm not to get too tense. To do that now and again. We'll have a little break in a bit so that you can get up and you can stretch and just move yourself a little bit, because sitting for too long wears on the body. And I know I'm really bad for just getting into my drawing and forgetting to get up and stretch, and then I pay for it. So I'm trying to teach myself to be really aware of that, and to not forget about taking breaks.
It also gives you a chance to step back from your work, I would imagine, too, and kind of see.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And that's a really important thing to do, is to step back and have a look and see where you're at, and see, oh, I need to add more of something here, or a little bit more intense color there, or whatever it is that you're seeing. It's important to give yourself that opportunity to look at it from a bit more of a distance.
Are you still working with the olive?
Yes. Yeah, we'll be working with the olive for a little bit here, because there's a lot of that olive green in lots of areas. So now we're going to work out a little bit more on the edge and filling in some of the olive green. And you'll really notice that there's other colors that are just on the edge of the eye. So we're going to be in a little bit using some other colors that will capture those kind of details as well. So I'm not going straight to the edge. I'm going near it, but not right at the edge, so that I can go back. Now I'm going to fill those little areas in, because those were little dots that I was seeing in the eye. Go back and capture those little dots. Oh, and I missed this little dot down here, so I'm going to fill that in. So I've increased my pressure just slightly when I want to get some of those little marks into the eye. I'll just increase my pressure slightly, not a lot, just slightly. There's another little catch light up here, so I'm wanting to avoid that. So I'll just work around that a little bit and add a few more lines coming down in here. A couple of other little catch lights, little swirlies. And sometimes some eyes have really like lots of little wigglies and different things like that. This eye tends to have more lines. So that's why I'm working on capturing those. So this is where we're going to leave that catch light, those little squares, just work around those and give a little bit of a line there. So we're going to deepen this olive green kind of all on the edge here. So one thing a lot of new artists to color pencil struggle with is, how do I pick colors? And it's partly a matter of training your eye to look at color and really sort of see what's actually there. And so when I looked at this eye initially, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's a green and yellow eye. But then I started noticing down here, there's kind of a browny pink color. So we're going to be using in a little bit the Caput Mortem Violet, and that will capture some of that detailing. So I'll show you that in just a second, so you'll get what I'm talking about. But you can easily see lots of different colors if you pay close attention to a subject, and you'll be surprised, like you wouldn't think it, but there's like, say in a anything that's black, like a dog for instance, you're not just going to be coloring it with, drawing it with black. You're going to be doing blues and sometimes a little bit of reds and all sorts of colors that you wouldn't think would be in the black dog. But that's the way the light hits it and reflects in the fur. Like there's a lot of variation that'll happen in a black animal. So I'm just going in and I'm adding some more lines and marks and squiggles and whatever I see in the green of the eye. In this part, you could go forever adding in little details and things like that. We're not going to do that, but you could spend virtually hours filling in all the little marks and shadings and different things that you see. We won't have time to do all of that. Okay, so that gives us a good starting point. Now I'm going to get the Caput Mortem Violet, and we're going to add here in the bottom of the eye. You'll see that there's that whole area that we're going to introduce that color all the way around the rim of the eye on the bottom here. It doesn't show up as much at the top, but there is a little bit of Caput Mortem Violet up here. And you'll notice when I used it up here, it almost looks a little different than down here because we're adding it on top of the olive green. So it changes the color just that little bit, which actually is helpful because it's all about the blending that makes it not be flat. It'll start to look three-dimensional the more shading you give your subject. And so one of the issues that I deal with Mito that I have to accommodate for is I have a tremor. So you'll see if I hold my hand like that, I'm shaking. So when I'm working, what I have to really pay attention to is keeping my hand in contact with my work table all the time, or my shaking can really skew my drawing. So it's, you know, we all have to adapt to whatever our physical situation is. And with me, It's both a tremor, and when I have migraines, it makes it hard to do artwork. So those times when it's really bad, I just have to go, well, it's not a today thing. I have to wait till another day to be able to draw. And that's okay. It's totally okay. We have to work within whatever physical restraints we have.
Christine, how did you get to the point that you were able to hold grace for yourself like that?
I guess I've always had physical issues. Like, I started having symptoms of mito right from being a very young child, but of course we didn't know that that's what it was. And so I've always had to adjust how I do things, when I do things. Like, for example, when I was a little kid and doing PE, I could never run. And so I really struggled with that, and I got into trouble from teachers quite a bit because they figured I was just, trying to get out of doing it. And so I explained to the teachers, no, I can't breathe. I'm just exhausted. Like, and not everybody understands. I'm sure we've all encountered, sometimes it might even be people in our own family who go, well, why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? You can do some things, but you can't do other things. And they may not always understand. But I think for me, what I found was really key was giving myself permission to meet my own needs. And sometimes it's in the face of criticism on by people we know and stuff, and you just have to do the best that you can do and try not to let what other people say affect you. Okay, we're going to start with the dark sepia. And so the outer part of the eye has a fairly dark rim around it. So we're going to be capturing some of that right now, and that'll intensify the green. So I'm just going to initially start by doing a little bit of an outside line so that I can control where I'm going a little bit more and pay attention to the edge. My drawing may look a little bit grainy in the photograph or in the camera here. It's partly because I've got the camera zoomed in a fair amount. And so as we add subsequent layers, the graininess is going to disappear just because we're filling in the tooth of the paper. So tooth just means how a paper is made. You'll get different amounts of tooth. Some paper is made quite rough, and it will have like way more tooth. The surface that I'm working on is pastel matte, and it has a velvety texture, so it gives you some grain, but not like as much as, say, a watercolor paper might have to it. So the surface you choose is really going to affect what your outcome will be. And so it's good to experiment with what surfaces work for you the best. And a lot of that will depend on what you're trying to accomplish. How detailed you want to get, how textured you want it to look. So again, I'm just going around these little catch lights that are in the back and just missing those. Just going to go around the edge here because that's where the darkest area is of the eye.
And again, what crown are you using right now?
Sorry, this is still the dark sepia. I haven't changed.
And if you don't have a dark sepia, what would you choose?
A really dark gray, like whatever you have that's a darker gray. You could also do black, and just be very light-handed with the black. But the dark sepia is kind of almost like a brownie color.
Mm-hmm.
And so a brownie gray, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Okay, so we're going to leave the dark sepia alone for a minute. And
we're almost an hour in, Christine, so you just let
okay,
us know when we need to take a break.
okay. We'll do one last color and then we'll take a break. So now we're going to do, it's the cold gray 2. And what the cold gray will allow us to do is just to help blend some of the colors together. It's an interesting thing with colored pencil is when you have you lay down colors, you can use something lighter like a white or a gray, and it'll just help to meld the colors together a bit. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So here's, like, it looks, if you look right here, it looks kind of, how would I describe that? Like kind of fuzzy. So when I go over the cold gray with the cold gray 2, you'll see that the colors start to blend together better. Can you see that a little bit? And so we'll just kind of go over here on this bottom part because there's a fair amount of light that's catching here on the bottom. And this just will help to soften the layers and blend them a bit. I'm just going over all of these areas just to, with a little bit of the cold gray 2, just to help blend those together. And then we'll take a break and come back after. Should we give everybody like maybe about 5 minutes? Go get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, drink of water, bathroom break, whatever you need. Okay, so that cold gray 2 just sort of helped to begin to unite the different layers. I'm not going to necessarily do it everywhere, but I want to hit some of the areas that we're looking a little too just like lined. They needed a little bit more blending.
Do you ever blend with your finger with the colored pencils, or is that harder with
No,
colored?
but what I do sometimes do is there are these things called blenders. So it's another pencil. Sorry, I'm gonna hold it down here so you can see. So this one's by Durant, and so it's a blender. So I'll show you what it does. So it makes a bit of a scratchy noise, so I'm sorry if that is irritating in the microphone. So it just helps to blend the colors together a little bit. But I find the cold gray 2 is just as effective as a blender, or it could be that you do it with white or another gray color. So you can see it's blended a little bit, but It's not always my preferred method.
Okay.
So, okay, well, let's take a little break. And we'll come back in 5 minutes. So that'll make it just about I'm just trying to see the clock here. 12. I'm in BC, so on the west side of Canada. So
Be a little
I don't know.
after 4 on the East Coast.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So in about 5 minutes we'll come back and get going on the next part.
And I'm going to leave the picture of the eye up for anybody that wants to
Keep
continue
looking.
drawing.
Yeah,
And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or you can wait until afterwards. I'm really excited to see what people are creating.
yeah,
I see
definitely.
Catherine working hard in there. I'm excited to see her picture.
Okay, well, we'll be back in 5 minutes and carry on.
All right.
Anybody's hearing me? I'm sharpening some pencils.
So if you're just joining us, you'll notice that Christine just put in the chat something called I'm going to mispronounce it, Parblo two-finger glove. And she talked earlier about how she wears that to help prevent smudging, and that there's also special paper that she uses similar to wax paper that she can place over the side of her drawing to also help with smudging. Um, Christine, I'm curious if, I don't know if you still have your volume on, but I'm curious if you find wax paper to be effective if you don't have the other fancy stuff.
I haven't used it personally because I have my supplies, but I can imagine that it would work fine. But the other thing you can cover up your drawing with so it doesn't smudge is even just a piece of printer paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. But since I have glassine and I use it to protect my drawings, it's just a good option to use it. So but yeah, you can essentially anything that you're going to cover it up with to protect it is all you need. You don't have to get fancy. Okay, so if everybody's good to go, I think we can get back at it.
Christine, can you just take a second? We do have a couple people that just joined us.
Oh,
And I'm curious if you could just speak a little bit about how you layer your colors and why you do that. So if they're just joining us, they'll be able to catch that as well.
sure. So I'm just thinking the best way to explain it. So if you were to do a drawing and only use like a couple of colors, you're not going to capture all of the intricacies of what your subject looks like. It's going to look like you've colored in a coloring book and you've only just filled in, you know, the spaces between the black lines. It won't give you that three-dimensional effect that you can achieve by layering and blending your colors together. So it's really important to just work away, adding layer upon layer as much as your paper will allow you to do, because some paper is going to allow you to add more layers than others. So pastel mat, the surface I'm working on, it can take as many as 10 layers of color, and it's just going to give you more and more of that sort of photorealism or close to that, the more layers you add and the more detail you put into your drawing. Do you think that we're ready to get going again, Stephanie?
I think so.
Okay. If anybody is not back, it's just going to be what we're going to be doing now is just adding more details, a little bit more structure to the pupil. So don't feel you're, going to be really behind or anything like that. So I'm going back in with the Caput Mortem Violet, and I'm just going to add in a few little lines and squiggles and things like that. Again, it's another layer of detail. And the more of these little bits and pieces of detail that you add, the more realistic your image is going to become. So you can spend absolute hours adding in tons and tons of little details, but you don't have to either. Like that's my style, and some people prefer a little bit more of a sketcherly look, and that's totally fine. You'll find the way that you like to work over time. When you try on a new medium, everybody's going to come at it from a slightly different approach, and there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever works for you, whatever makes you sort of feel happy with what you're doing. And I was just noticing that my line drawing it's not quite as rounded as I'd like to have been. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of a rim right here. There, that's a bit more rounded. So Sometimes you have to go in and correct a line drawing as you're starting to work with it. You'll realize, oh, that's not quite the effect that I wanted. Or, it doesn't look quite right. So you'll adjust when you're drawing. So I'm going to go back in with some black now. We're going to darken up this edge a bit more. So I'm just going to be doing back and forth lines to strengthen that outer rim of the eye. And it's going to look a bit fuzzy on the edge until we strengthen things up a little bit. And that's totally normal. So don't fuss with that too much at this stage. I'm trying to stay out of your view. So I'm kind of doing things I wouldn't normally do when I'm drawing. I'm kind of going from the top rather than from the side. But don't feel you have to do that. It's just me trying to make sure you can still see what I'm drawing. So as I mentioned, we're not necessarily going to capture every single detail of this eye that is in the reference photo, but what we're looking to achieve is a representation of the eye with as much detail or as little detail as we want to give it. There's no, hard and fast rule that has to look exactly like the image that we're looking at. So I'm just adding a bit more black. Well, we hadn't added any black, but I'm adding more black coming from the pupil itself and just strengthening up the details coming into the center here. And I'm going back and forth, checking my reference photo, looking for any kind of like little details that I want to capture. And it's always every layer, every detail that you add is just going to make it that much more realistic. If that's what you're going for. And if you want to be, like I said, a little bit more sketchily, that's fine too. Now, one color that I'm seeing in here that I didn't put into the palette that I'm now realizing I want to have, and anybody can, so this one is called Sanguine. If you don't have that, if you've got an orange, you can use the orange. But I just realized it's got a little bit of orange, particularly in this bottom area, that I want to capture. So I'm just going to add some of that in, but you can add whatever orange you might have. I wouldn't go a bright orange, but something something a little softer than that. There. Didn't need a lot down on the bottom, needs a little bit here on the top as well. Just in one little area. Over here. And the more you draw, the more I find you are able to pick out colors of what you're trying to capture. And so you can get much more detailed as time goes on with your colors, with your all the marks that you make. You'll get a little bit more detailed with all of that as time goes on. So I'm just adding a bit more black, another layer of black, just to intensify the center of the eye here. And I also There's another brand of pencils that I use that are a little bit, they're a little bit waxier, I guess is how I would describe it. And so this is a luminance black, and it just, I find it's a bit creamier. And so I can do another layer on top of the Pablos, and it just intensifies way more than what the Pablos does. So I'd like to bring it in, but I didn't put it on the list, on the supply list, because I didn't think everybody was gonna necessarily want to invest a ton of money into their supplies for this drawing. But if you were interested in having another brand of pencils, I highly recommend they're made by Caran d'Ache, and they're a fantastic pencil. They work really well on top of the Pablos to intensify color. So you can see that the black is way more intense now. And in part that's by virtue of just doing another layer, but it also is the creaminess of the Pablos just gives you a bit more of a solid kind of fill in. And just going all the way around the outer edge as well, and strengthening up that shadow. And I'm going to start bringing in the black a little bit further into the eye. I don't want to cover up all of the green that I put in place, so I'm just doing a little bit. And then we're going to go back in after this with the olive green again, and just that'll strengthen up the green that we've already put into the eye and give a little bit more definition again.
You know, Christine, you've talked about several different types of paper. How do you know when the paper that you have is kind of like done with your layering? If you don't have, you know, the
If color is not going down?
yeah, like if you've kind of reached your maximum.
Exactly, yeah. If it's no longer accepting pigment, then that's when you know that your paper has reached its max. So you want to know how your paper's going to perform, and how many layers it will accept, because it's just good information to have. But you know, you'll reach a point anyway, probably before the paper does that, where you're going, okay, I've done enough. I'm tired of this subject. So you're gonna find, you know, kind of what feels right for you. Okay, so what do I do with my green? Oh, there it is. I put things down in the wrong place and then I can't find them again. So we're going to go back in with the green, as I said. We're just going to be adding in a bit more, strengthening up what we already have put down. And then we're going to call the center of the eye done, and go to work on the exterior of the eye, on the white of the eye, on a bit of the flesh. I don't know how much time we'll get to finish all of the details of the eye, but we'll get as much done as we can get done.
Do you ever work with mixed mediums where maybe you would add charcoal to like as you're doing pencil crowns too, or do you mainly stick with one medium at a time?
With colored pencil, I don't tend to mix anything else with it. That's not to say you can't, it's just not my sort of preferred way of using colored pencils. I do sometimes vary the different mediums that I work with. So when I'm doing let's see, use an example here. When I'm doing in my sketchbook, for instance, I will sometimes add two different mediums together. So like I might do some colored pencil and then, or sorry, what I would do actually is first start with some ink and then go over with colored pencil. So in my sketchbook, I tend to do a lot more mixed media to capture things, or I might use graphite and then colored pencil, things like that. So it really depends on personal preference as to what you do or don't do. Okay, I think I'll call that done. Just give a couple of last little areas of strength to the green. Okay, we'll call that done. Now we're going to work on the whites of the eye, and you'll look at it and you'll go, well, it kind of looks a fair bit the same, but really there's blues in there, there's grays in there, obviously white, but because our paper is white, we don't necessarily need to use white. Where we'll create the three-dimension is using the other colors. Pardon me. So we're going to start with that. We're going to start with the light ultramarine. Let's see if I can turn it so that you can see it. Kind of hard with the light hitting it. It doesn't read terribly well. But anyway, it is the light ultramarine. So you notice in your reference photo, there's a little area that's left white. So I'm just going to draw this little bit of a line, just so I know where to stop with the blue. So that's pretty much this is the area that will be left white, and we'll work down and just, again, work in little circles. And we're going to fill in a little bit of this blue all the way along here, and it goes right up actually to the eyeball itself, because that's where the eyeball itself almost starts to get a bit of a bluish tint on the edge. So we're going to be pulling that little bit of black and green into the edge of the white of the eye. So we're going to come down here as well. There's a little bit of lines, kind of like the vein of the eye that's showing through. So we're going to just add a bit of that in. Okay, so that's good for that side of the eye. Now we're going to do all the way along this bottom edge here. There's blue. It's just a small area, so you just put a little bit along the edge here, all the way around. And then when you get up into this corner, you'll notice that there's shading underneath the edge of the where the flesh and the eyeball meet. So we're just going to give a little bit of blue right along there. Okay, so that's all the blue we're going to do for the moment. And I'm just looking for my cold gray 2. What happens when you put your pencils in the wrong place? You can't find them when you need them. So we're going to take the cold gray 2 just gotta sharpen it here one sec. Okay, so we're gonna go over those same blue areas. This time you can go right into that lighter area that we left clear and add your gray in. Because it's not a pure white. When you compare it to the other side of the eye, you can see that it's not pure white. So we're gonna add that coloration in now with the gray. So we're just gonna be filling this side of the eye in and completely with this cold gray too.
And it looks like you're still going in the circular movements.
Yeah, yeah. Most of the time I use a circular movement for filling in backgrounds. It's only till I get to sort of more detailed areas that I might change up the way I do my work. Now, I've just noticed that I've got some smudging that happened, even though I was using both the glassine and the glove. So what I'm just going to do, as you can see, is I'm using my kneadable eraser and I'm just cleaning that area up. I've got a dog here. There we go. So that's made it nice and white again. Add a bit more of the cold gray all the way around here. And what that's going to help to do is to give a roundness to the eye. Because if you just left it where it was all white right there, you wouldn't start to feel that roundness that we need to create. So we're just going to put some all the way kind of around the perimeter here, and then leave this area here white without any color at all. Okay, I think that's probably got it. I'm going to add a little bit of the cold gray in a couple of spots here. I was just noticing that we could do that, and that would give a little bit more detail. And you'll notice that in the eye, pretty much everybody's eye has it. There's the little veins that show up. So I don't see any veins on this side of the eye, but I certainly do on this side of the eye. So I'm just going to go in with a little bit of the Caput Mortuum Violet and put a couple of squiggles in kind of wherever I think they need to be. I'm following the reference photo to some degree, but I'm not like worrying about doing it exactly the same. Yeah, just a few little squiggles and lines. And along where we left that lighter area, I can see that there's a little bit more coloration. So I think that that is probably fine there. And while I've got Caput Mortuum Violet in my hand, we're going to start adding in a little bit of the outer area of the eye as well. So going right up to where the edge of the eye is where we're going to be filling in now. So it's almost like there's a line pretty much right along that whole bottom of the eye. So we're just going to not necessarily do it like as a line, but just sort of hitting different areas very lightly. So you'll see I've left a little gap there. So let's go up here, fill that part in. And there is a little bit of the Caput Morton violet sort of at the top of the eye, so I'm just gonna kind of fill in a couple of random spots where I see that color. And so it actually even extends the Caput Morton violet, since I've got it in my hand, it all extends all the way out here. And Caput Morton violet is a really lovely color. It's kind of like a little bit of a purpley tone to it. So I'll move my tape over. And it gives a really nice effect when you're trying to capture some of the darker flesh tones. So I'm just going to use it while it's in my hand. I've got other flesh colors to use, but this is really a good base for those other colors. Okay, that's good for that. Now we want to get into, so I'm just deciding what direction to go in next here. Okay, so I want to start using the flesh tones. So what I quite often do when I'm working in a group of colors is I have all three colors in my hand, because I know I'm just going to be jumping back and forth between them all. So it's easier to have them all in my one hand, and then I can just keep switching and not having to keep reaching for them. So I'm going to start with the lightest color, which is the, I'm trying to see it here. I think it's the beige red is the color. So you'll see it here. Yeah, beige red. So we're going to do a bunch of sort of filling in of just some of the basic colors around the eye. Oh, I want to go up here. So it's a fairly large area of the flesh. We're not going to get it all done, but I just want to start you on that process, and you can always finish it on your own. Move the glass in here so I don't muck anything up. So it's always a little bit tedious when you've got like a large area of one color to fill in, but just bear with it. It'll come together before you know it. I'm staying fairly close to the edge of the eye itself, because you'll notice in your reference photo, you get a lot of white showing through this area here. So I'm leaving that alone for the moment and just staying closer into the eyeball and the pupil and everything. And then we've got some eyelashes here that we'll be putting in later if we have time. And just staying away from where there's a bunch of highlights right there. So just staying to the side of those. And put some down here, very, very little, just because there's a lot of highlights through there. And I've just noticed again, I've got some smudging here, so I'm just gonna tidy that up a little bit. That's the good thing about having the kneadable eraser, is if you do get smudging, I think my glassine is probably a bit dirty, which is why I'm getting some smudging. Yeah, it's got quite a bit of debris on there, so I usually change it out fairly frequently to a new piece, just so that I'm not getting that transfer happening. Okay, so just continuing to add the flash tone around the eye, staying away from these little spots, that the little circles, because those are the highlights. And along the eye itself, there's a whiter area. It's not completely white, but it's a little softer of a flesh tone. So I'm going to stay away from it for now. I've got another little trick to show you in a second here. So I'm just going to continue up around, and I'm just filling in this color all the way around. Just put a little tiny bit closer to the eye. Here, a little bit more. Okay, so you should just see a light, almost like a wash. If you were using watercolors, it'd be kind of like a light wash of the color that you've put down all the way around. So now I'm going to go in with the, let me see the color here, the cinnamon, and just darken up some of the areas that need to be a bit darker. So under here where the eyelid is going, requires a bit darker area. Just go along. So over time, you start to train your eye to see more and more detail of your subject. And as you improve with that observation, your drawings just automatically improve as well, because you're just capturing that much more detail, areas of interest, things like that. So we're sliding. And so here in the corner of the eye, we've got quite a bit of the pink showing through. So I'm going to add all of that in. And this area is quite white, so we'll leave that catch light alone. And a little darker area down here, coming from the corner of the eye and down here. So we're just going to fill that area in. And it extends over here past the eyelashes. Okay, so we'll call that color done. And now we go into the dark flesh next. And wherever there's those darker shadows, we're going to fill more of that in. And this is just layer upon layer, as we did with the center of the eye, just to strengthen the colors, to give you the intensity that you need. We're just continuing to add layer upon layer. Are there any questions in the chat so far, or anything that anybody wants to come on and ask as we're working away here?
There aren't any questions in the chat, but it's amazing to watch it come together.
Yeah, it's always fun to see a drawing start to really come together, and it becomes very three-dimensional the more you add to it.
Now, let's say this eye was older, Christine. What would you do differently?
Well, again, like having a reference photo that will give that kind of detail is the key. But I find with older eyes, you tend to get a little bit more blurriness. They're not quite as defined in the same way as a young person's eye is. So it's always kind of an interesting difference between different subjects, like how you capture different things. Like I was noticing with my mom's eyes as she got older, and I mean, part of it was cataracts, but also she was blind from macular degeneration. And what I noticed about her eyes a lot was that she had this kind of like just haziness, I guess is a way to describe it. Like her eyes did not look the way they did when she was younger, because there was always this kind of cloudiness to them. So now with these little white highlights, bleh, can't talk apparently, I'm just going to go around them and create a bit of the texture of the skin by just kind of doing some little lines, because your skin is not, like if you look at your skin close up, it's not flat. It's like little lines, little creases. And certainly too, when you're doing an older person, you're going to be spending a lot more time doing those kind of details around the eye, because as you age, as we all know, things change. So you'll have to spend a lot more time with an older person when you draw them, of capturing kind of all those qualities, or it just won't look accurate because you won't have captured those kind of details. And then in this area, another technique that I sometimes do as well is I just start doing squiggly lines, because that'll capture the fine little creases in the skin. Okay, so we'll leave it there, I think, with the darker flash for the moment. And we're going to go back in with some of the Caput Mortem violet, I think. Where did I put it? Yeah, there we go. So the Caput Mortem violet will add a little bit more of the shadows, strengthen those up a little bit, because they're, as you do your layers, sometimes the colors that you put down first, they start to almost fade a little bit. So sometimes you have to go back in when you've colored on top of something and strengthen that up again. And that's okay. It's just part of the layering process. Just here. And there's quite a bright highlight there, here in this corner here. So I'm just actually going to use some white, block that in a little bit, and then I'm going to go around it with some ivory, and that's going to help to create a bit of a highlight there. And I'm going to do some of the ivory kind of in other areas as well, partly to blend the pink tones that we've already laid down. And the skin has a lot of texture to it, so you want to. My husband's bringing me more tea. He's a lovely, loving husband. He spoils me.
What kind of tea do you like to drink while you're working?
Generally just a black tea. I'm not a, I don't particularly care for flavored like fruity type teas. I don't like fruity type teas, but I love either black tea, Earl Grey, or chai tea is my favorites. Okay, so that just gives some nice skin tones. And then we're going to go back in with the Caput Mortem Violet again and just continue to increase the shadow a little bit more. And then we'll quickly go on to the onto the eyelashes to give that final look of an eye. A bit more right in here. And again, with the details of the skin, you can go in with the Caput Mortem Violet as well and add, you know, a few little lines, squiggles, just randomly, and that'll help give the detail of the skin. Go over here a little bit and add a little bit more shading underneath these eyelashes. So one of the other things that you want to pay attention to when you're drawing is essentially you start with the very farthest color. So as we did with the eye, the color behind everything else was the yellow. So that's why I started with the yellow first. And then we added all the other colors on top of it. Because if we were to have come in with the green first, we wouldn't have had the same amount of space for the yellow. So I just jump around a little bit with this color when I've got it in my hand and just pick up the areas that are in shadow a bit more with the Caput Mortem Violet. And I think that that's probably enough of that just to get us moving on to the next thing. Sorry, I just saw I need a little bit more Caput Mortem Violet right in here. Okay, I think that's good. And then now we'll get into doing the eyelashes. Now the eyelashes on this person's eye are kind of interesting. On the outer corner here, you'll see that they're more of a blondie color. So we're gonna actually just do a few little swoops of this light cadmium yellow just to kind of capture that. Then we'll go over top of them with another color to take away a bit of the yellow effect, because it's a bit too strong of the yellow. I probably would have gone with something a little bit more creamier. I'll just show you what I mean by that. So I just happen to have it on my desk. So I'm pulling this creamier yellow, that's one of the Caran d'Ache colors, and I'll just make some lines with that just to tone down that yellow a little bit. Okay, that was all it needed, just a little. And then we're going to grab, sorry, trying to find it, the dark sepia, and we'll do a bunch of the eyelashes with the dark sepia. But this is when you want to have a sharp point to your pencil, when you've got fine lines you're trying to draw. So excuse the noise for 1 second. It's better. So now we're going to just be doing quick little sweeping motions for the eyelashes. And you'll notice that where we had this little catch light, that's actually a spot where the eyelashes are reflecting onto the eye. So we're just going to do a few little lines coming down there. And just strengthen this edge up here a little bit with the dark sepia too. And go back to the eyelashes here. So, and you really want to do like really quick sweeping motions. That's how you'll get the roundness. And there's a few sweeping upwards. And then we get a bunch of the smaller ones showing down here. This is just a real quick little flick of your hand. You don't have to like go slow and tedious. You wanna just do quick little movements. And they cross over each other in places. They're not just all straight.
I feel like I'm having flashbacks of an eyelash in my eye.
Fair. And I just want to strengthen up this edge of this eye too. That'll help give it a little bit more of roundness. So I'm using the dark sepia to do that still. And it doesn't show in the reference photo, but to give a little bit more roundness, I'm going to darken up the corner edge of the eye here. And on this side as well. Down here. Everybody's being so quiet today. I'm assuming that means you're really concentrating.
I think people are enjoying it. And people have come in at different points and had to, I think, leave. And we'll probably come back to this video once we post it.
Nice. Okay, I want to pull in the cold gray. I think it is. Or is this cold gray 5? Yeah, this is the darker cold gray, because I want to capture this little bit of a darker area here in the corner of the eye. And again, this just helps add to the dimension of the eye. Is having darker areas and lighter areas. So you can see by going around the outer edge like this, we're just making it appear that the eye is rounded. we'll do here on the bottom as well. How much time do we have left?
We're almost at close. It's we have about
Okay.
5 minutes left. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, well, we're just nearing the end here of the drawing, and then we'll have a few questions if anybody has questions and wants to show off their work. No pressure if you don't. Would love to see it, but yeah, I get some people are shyer about showing their work, so only if you feel comfortable. So now it almost appears that the eye does look glassy just because of the shading that we added to it. And if I had another couple of hours, I would probably spend more time adding in more detail around the eye, probably strengthening up some of the color within the pupil itself. Just, you know, carrying on further refining and details. But I know we don't have that kind of time today, so it just has given us, you know, the starting point to introduce you to how to do eyes, how to do details, things like that.
What is your favorite, like when you, is the eye your favorite part of the human body to focus on if you have to pick like just one part, or is there another part that you enjoy as well, like a hand or a nose or?
Well, for me, with whatever I'm drawing, like whether it's an animal, whether it's a person, the eye, if you don't get the eyes right, it's never going to look like what you're trying to draw. So you have to get the eyes right. And so actually, I have one that I'm working on right now. This is a commission that I'm doing of 4 different animals.
Oh, wow.
So if I hadn't had the eyes right in the cat or in either of the dogs, there's still one more cat to draw here. If I didn't have those details right off the bat, it wouldn't look right. So you can see how the eyes, so the one dog, the brown dog, he's blind in one eye, he doesn't have an eyeball. So I had to capture that as well to make it realistic. And then you can see the white dog has really nice eyes. I had to capture the brown underneath, but also really make sure that I kept that catch light clear and added a lot of shadow around the eye. So white animals are really interesting to draw. You think, oh, a white dog is a white dog, but you have to add in all sorts of colors, like some blues, some yellows, grays, like all sorts of colors, just to really show that the animal, the way the light hits it. And then this other one here. So I just completed this commission for a client of her 3 children. Whoops. And so you can see like there's a lot of different flesh tone colors that you have to do. Like the little girl in the center has much browner skin tone than either of the other children. And even though they're oriental tones in their skin, that a bit more of the olive tones as well. So you really have to pay attention to, you know, what kind of colors are in the skin.
Well, as we're wrapping up here, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna stop the recording, and then maybe we can have a time of sharing. There's a couple people that have been able to stay on the whole time. And so I'd love for us to be able to share drawings, but hold on one
Yeah.
second. Let me
Yeah, let's do that.
um
So I've got two cameras, so I'm swinging back and forth between the two to read the chat. So pardon my back here for a moment.